Welcome to the Civic Hub. The Civic Hub is a shared community space for grassroots and small nonprofit organizations working to make lives better for everyone in Waterloo region. Partner organizations come from a range of fields: environmental justice, democratic reform, arts and culture, anti-poverty, anti-racism, human rights, ethno-cultural and newcomer support, technology, peace and nonviolence, spirituality, and well-being. On the show, we welcome one of our partners to the Civic Hub. Today on Welcome to the Civic Hub, we have Carol Stalker and Colleen Cooper from Basic Income Waterloo Region. Colleen and Carol, welcome to the Civic Hub.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Very welcome. Tell me about basic income. Is that just free money?
No, not exactly.
Leading question, I knew better.
What we are advocating for is a basic income guarantee, which would be targeted to people who need it. Obviously, a threshold of income would have to be established, below which no one would fall.
Okay.
We think it is would be far superior to the current very broken social safety net. Yeah. It would be easier to access. People would not have to jump through the very difficult hoops that they currently have to do, for instance, in applying for social assistance or Ontario disability. It would help precarious workers. I think one of the reasons basic income is getting a lot more attention and support across Canada is that precarious work is on the rise, right, and people are feeling very insecure. Yeah. It would provide a sense of security and reduce a tremendous amount of stress.
A lot of the gig work, a lot of that precarious work doesn't qualify for employment benefits when the work just goes away.
That's correct, yes. Right. Yeah.
So, and you're advocating for having this applicable universally for everybody to receive so that they don't fall below a particular threshold. That's slightly different from a universal basic income, isn't it?
It is. And many, actually, in an ideal world, I think a lot of us would say, let's have a universal basic income, which means everyone gets a certain amount of money, and then those who don't need it get it taxed back.
Right.
I guess here, and actually in the UK and in Europe, that seems to be the approach that a lot of the groups are taking to advocate for a universal basic income. And some people here in Canada too. But most of the advocacy groups here in Canada are advocating for a basic income guarantee, a basic livable income guarantee. And I guess that's because we think politically it's more feasible. Okay. I mean, one would hope that if we are successful in getting a basic income guarantee, that ultimately we would move to a universal one, which obviously would have some benefits. Yeah. But at this point, I mean, if you remember the Ontario pilot that was instituted back in 2018 or 2017, I think it was targeted to people whose income was below what people need for to live with dignity.
Yeah. So it wasn't a livable income, and it was definitely means tested, so that only certain people would qualify for it.
Yeah, the people who were selected to receive it were people whose income was below a threshold, yeah.
And so a basic income guarantee would still require that means testing.
It would be, what we envision is that it would be administered through the CRA, the revenue.
Okay.
And obviously, it's not a panacea. We would still need to provide supports to lots of people, especially, for instance, to help them file income tax, because you'd have to file income tax in order to get it. And you would have to have a mechanism by which if someone did lose their job, they could very quickly receive the basic income
Right.
guarantee, not
Right.
wait, months.
Yeah,
So the reason that we've been focusing on a basic income is because we do believe that everybody should receive enough money to be able to meet their basic needs.
Right.
So if that's paying rent, buying food, everybody's entitled to that. And we believe that. And that's why we support a basic income and why we've become involved in the movement.
Yeah.
And it's a human rights issue.
Yes.
I mean, I think, it's, to our way of thinking, it's a disgrace and unforgivable that in a country as wealthy as Canada, we have people living on the streets, having to go to food banks, and we all know there's way more people going to food banks today than in the past.
Yeah. So one of the arguments against a basic income guarantee that I hear is that the people who have no money aren't responsible enough to receive a basic income guarantee. So why not just provide them with housing, provide them with the food bank food, provide them with these things that they need rather than just giving them a pile of money?
Well, in actual fact, those perceptions are false. And if you look at the literature, and there's a lot of it, there's overwhelming proof of how this can work. And we do get that a lot, that people believe that if you give people money for, quote, nothing, they're just going to waste it or spend it on inappropriate things. The literature will tell you that that is not the case. The majority of people who receive a basic income use it for the purpose it was intended to. So in other words, even people who are not housed, once they start receiving a basic income, at the end of their session of receiving that money, the majority have found a place to live. They're able to purchase food, and they don't waste it on those vice kinds of things that people believe. So in actual fact, there's been evidence collected about this type of system for over 50 years. And it's not a new thing. There have been pilots and lots of studies, and we're actually almost tired of the pilots because we know it can work. There's proof that it can work, and people who have been receiving a basic income, those people who were involved in the Ontario pilot, and even though it was pulled out from under them too soon, have described the change that it made to their lives and what it meant to them to receive that money.
There's actually a very nice photo essay done by someone in Hamilton
That's
who was
right.
on the program and documented a lot of the people that were receiving
Yeah.
that basic income.
Yeah, Jesse Golem. Yeah.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yes.
Yeah.
And so you're right. There could be people who, the odd person who doesn't use it for what it was intended. But I would like to point out that in all echelons of society, even people who make a lot of money, sometimes cheat the system or do things that they aren't supposed to do. So we don't want to just say that everybody who's found themselves in a challenging situation is not trustworthy, because we know that's not true.
Right. The other thing that I hear from my right-wing friends is that if you give people a basic income, nobody will want to work. Where are we going to get all our cheap labor from?
Well, again, the pilots and experiments that have been done not only in Canada but around the world, and there's been a lot recently in the United States, show that to be a complete myth. People do, if they have a job, they keep working. Sometimes people may stop working temporarily and get more skills, to get a better job. But often people use the money to help them get a job. Currently, if you're on social assistance, it's very difficult to get a job because you don't have enough money for transportation, for the clothing, et cetera, et cetera. Our current system really prevents people who want to work from actually being able to get a job.
And anybody who does find work on social assistance gets that money clawed back.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so there's no incentive at all to work.
And that's right. Yeah. The government will tell you they're trying to help people get work, but the way it's designed, it's doing the exact opposite.
So providing a basic income is going to let people find the work that they are most suited for.
Exactly. And I think it gives people some choices. I mean, people know what's going to work best for them. And you know, this patronizing attitude that government seems to have is not helpful.
There was a film that was made in the United States about one of the projects that they did, and this was filmed during COVID, when a particular community had many people who were having to access food banks and whatnot. And the people were having to stand in line for 7 and 8 hours to get their hamper of food. And the mayor thought, hey, this is kind of crazy. And the mayor sort of had the idea and got council to go along with it, that they would give each of these families a loaded gift card with cash on it, that they could then do what they wanted with that money, buy their own food, you know, whatever. And it was just a huge success because, first of all, we weren't wasting people's time, having them stand in line waiting for food. All these volunteers who were, you know, being there to distribute the food could now put their energies elsewhere. And it ended up being a boon to the entire community. So some of the people used their money to go to a cafe in the neighborhood, which helped the owners of that cafe. So it's not just the recipients who are always the beneficiaries, but the whole economy of that local place where they live. And also, as Carol said, by giving them some autonomy over what kind of food they get, when they get it, how they get it, it's just an empowering kind of thing, and makes for a lot less stress. You know, in my working life, I'm obviously a retired person, but I worked in public health. And, you know, we learned a lot about the determinants of health, and that if people don't have enough money and they don't have a good place to live, it's very hard for people to have good mental health and good physical health and access care. And so, again, all of that, so when giving that money improves the lives of people in many, many facets.
So I'm convinced this is a good idea. I've been convinced for a very long time, actually.
Good.
But what's happening? How is this being tackled by Basic Income Waterloo Region and by other basic income groups across Canada?
Well, I want to tell you about what's happened in Prince Edward Island. All of the political parties in PEI have voted in favor of a basic income guarantee demonstration project. And there's currently a working group headed by Minister Jenna Sudds of the federal government and a minister in the PEI government, working, supposedly at least, working on how the federal and the provincial government might work this out. So there's a tremendous amount of support in PEI and in the other Atlantic provinces. They're wanting at least a 5-year demonstration project. And I guess I would hope your listeners will let their MPs know that they support this, because it's a way to see how would it really work in a province in Canada, in the smallest province. You know. So that's one thing that's happening, and actually there's an organization called Coalition Canada, Basic Income Revenue de Base, that is very much working to support the PEI demonstration project.
So the Prince Edward Island demonstration is province-wide. It's not a select population within.
There's a report, a proposal on the website about how it could be paid for. There's been a lot of work go into it. So we would really like to see the federal government and the PEI government make this work.
Right. Yeah. And it's not just in Prince Edward Island. There's been some talk about a basic income study in the House of Commons in general.
Yes, there's been bills at the House of Commons recently. was considering a bill put forward by Leah Gazan from Winnipeg, and it was the idea to establish a framework for a basic income guarantee for Canada.
Right.
And it passed the first reading, but unfortunately was defeated in the second reading.
Yeah, that's very disappointing.
Very disappointing.
But it's not over yet.
No, because in the Senate, Senator Kim Pate has put forward a similar bill, again, calling on the government to establish a framework. And it has, I think, passed at least first reading and is currently being discussed in a finance committee. Okay. So it's been taking a long time, but it's still alive.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was a study out of the University of Victoria or British Columbia where a professor handed out money to a small number of individuals with tremendous results.
The homeless people in Vancouver, yes. And the findings were amazing, how it helped people find housing and reduce the number of homeless in that city. Yeah.
And of course, Canada is the originator of Mincome.
Exactly.
Which was, well, tell me about Mincome.
Well, I remember it. I'm old enough. It was in the 1970s, and my background is as a social worker, and I remember studying social work at the time and hearing about it. And it was in Dauphin, Manitoba, and the whole town was eligible, and a lot of data was collected. And unfortunately, it was canceled before the planned time was complete. And a lot of the data that was collected was packed away. But fortunately, in the last number of years, Evelyn Forget, who is a professor of economics in Manitoba, got access to that information, and her data has really shown how much money we could save, for instance, in healthcare costs, because the number of people going to the Emerge and going to doctors during the time they were receiving the basic income guarantee was I think it was something like 8% reduced.
If you've got a basic income, you can afford to take a day off work to go visit the doctor to keep yourself healthy to continue work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, as Colleen mentioned, the social determinants of health, the biggest one is income.
Right.
If you have an adequate income, you have a much better chance of staying away from hospitals and doctors. If you don't, then you're going to need them a lot. And we see this in our emergency rooms today, that a lot of the people on the streets and in very precarious income situations are going to the Emerge.
Yeah. Well, this is what you meant, Colleen, by all these different studies and the evidence being overwhelmingly in favor of a basic income guarantee.
That's correct. Yeah. Yes. And again, the savings aren't just in healthcare, although that's a really big one. But we also know that in policing and other social service type of things, that again, if people have enough income, there's a reduction in crime, there's a reduction in domestic violence and things like that. So there are many benefits to having people.
All the things that the politicians say that they want.
Right.
But haven't yet put into action by providing a basic income guarantee.
That's correct. Yeah. Yes.
The other thing I want to mention too is how it benefits children. Most of us know that those early years are very important to the health and well-being of individuals, and if parents have sufficient income, their ability to provide the both physical and emotional needs of children is so much improved. Yeah. So it might take a while to demonstrate, but our country would be a whole lot better off if we supported young families better than we do right now.
Yeah. I've heard that being put as a negative, in that women don't go back to work on a basic income. But what they're doing is they're spending more time with their children.
Yeah, that is one of the findings from the experiment in Manitoba back in the 70s, that the people who worked less, one group was young mothers.
Right.
But I think most of us know, ideally, I mean, what's best for children is for mothers to stay home as long as they can, you know, and that enables better mental health, healthier population.
There sure seems to be an intellectual block between the evidence and the practice.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
And I think one of the the big barriers for us is that many people believe that, quote, we can't afford it, or that it's going to somehow take money out of their pockets, and that's why people are opposed to it.
Yeah. So where does the money come from?
Okay, so, and again, we're not economists and we're not whatever, but when we do read the studies, what we are told is that we can afford it because 97% of the population would not see any change to their bottom line. So in other words, there are different ways that funds could be raised through different corporate taxes or whatever. And, you know, I'm not going to get into the details because I'm not the economist, but I'm going to say that the evidence is there, and not just by, I'll call us do-gooders like us. If you look at people who are experts in that area, they will tell you that a basic income is affordable. And of course, as we've said, yes, it might cost a little bit more, you know, from certain sources, but that the savings that will also be realized through reduced healthcare costs, policing, all that kind of thing, in the end, benefit all of us. It's also good for local economies. It encourages entrepreneurship, you know, all of those kinds of things. So the whole argument about, you know, can we afford it? Yes, we can afford it. And again, if you want to see how we can afford it, you know, read the studies. I don't have them at the...
Well, one place, we have a website. Basic Income
Yes.
Waterloo Region has a website with a lot of fact sheets and resources if people want to read further. The other point I want to make is the inequality in our country has grown tremendously over the last 10 to 20 years. And that is a big problem. There's lots of research that shows that everybody benefits when societies are more equal, and everybody suffers when it's not. And so we've got some people getting very, very rich, the few.
Yes.
And I think, you know, clearly one of the ways of paying for this is to make them pay their fair share.
Right.
And the money is there.
And I
It
think
can be done.
That used to be the case. There used to be a much higher rate of taxation, both for corporations and wealthy individuals. And I don't know, since the 1980s or so, you know, the rise of neoliberalism, that's all been whittled away, so that there currently is no money left to provide a basic income. And so those policies from the 1980s need to be restored.
I think that's definitely, the way to go. And there's a lot of economists who are suggesting that, yes.
You mentioned the website. That's biwr.ca.
I think if you Google Basic Income Waterloo Region, you'll see it's basicincome.ca.
BasicincomeWR.ca.
Okay. We'll have that on our show notes on the webpage at civichubwr.org. Click on the Welcome to the Civic Hub link, and you'll see all the show notes there. You've been with Basic Income for how long?
Probably about 4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years,
I would think. Carol's the
It's
veteran.
been, I've been a little longer, 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I first heard about Basic Income Waterloo Region about 10 years ago. And it's been a reasonably active group locally.
Well, actually, it started, I think, in 2013. A man named John Green was
Yes.
the founder.
I know, John.
And I know when I joined in 2015, it was still a fairly small group of very passionate advocates, but it has grown substantially since that time. We have a newsletter list, and that's over 300 people.
I'm on it.
Good. And yeah, we've been more, over the years, I think as people learn more about it, it's become, something that a lot of people want to be part of.
Yeah. And recently, Basic Income Waterloo Region has joined the Civic Hub.
Yes, well, in the last couple of years, I think.
It's been around for that long in
Yeah,
the Civic
yeah,
Hub. Okay, I guess
yeah.
I've not been paying that much attention. What does Basic Income get out of the Civic Hub?
Well, we have a meeting space there. So our organization, we're not a charity. We don't receive any funds. Like we're just concerned citizens who share a passion for equity and inclusion. And so we're working on this, but we don't have a budget. We don't have a hierarchy. So the Civic Hub provides us with a meeting space that we use, and we appreciate that. It's also an opportunity for us to link with other groups in the community that have similar ideals to us and that have similar goals. So one of our things that we like to do is advocacy on many different levels, and other groups also are advocates for different things, and often our asks or wishes align. And so it's a way for us to be connected to other groups that have similar goals and aspirations that we do.
I just want to mention, it's a meeting space, but also the ability to have a hybrid meeting. Because some of our members are working and it just makes it more accessible. So the fact that we meet at the Civic Hub and have Ratika's help in getting the technology so that we can bring people in on Zoom just makes it much better for what we're trying to do.
Have you acquired new members through the Civic Hub?
I think probably.
If people wanted to join, if people wanted to get involved in Basic Income Waterloo Region, how would they get a hold of you?
Well, on the website, there's a place where you can, we have an email, you can just simply email us, or there's a volunteer form that people can complete, and then we get in touch with you.
And that's basicincomewr.ca.
That's right, yeah.
Carol and Colleen, thank you so much for coming in, talking to me about basic income. Always good to know that there's still more work being done, even though there's more work to be done.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
Yes.
We appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Welcome to the Civic Hub.
Thanks.
You've been listening to Welcome to the Civic Hub, where we welcome community partners to the Civic Hub. The Civic Hub is online at civichubwr.org. You can reach the Civic Hub by email at civichub@waterlooregion.org. Welcome to the Civic Hub is produced at the studio of CKMS-FM 102.7 Radio Waterloo. The show is sponsored by the Social Development Center of Waterloo Region. The executive producer is Alexander Petrovich. Ritika Sharmali is a producer, host, and technical operator. Additional technical production is done by Anjali Sanderson, and I'm Bob Jonkman. Civic Hub is supported by the Region of Waterloo Upstream Fund. And the theme music is A Good Bass by Kumiku from the Free Music Archive, used under a Creative Commons CC0 license.